totally agree with that whole, you don't intend something to be harmful, but sometimes it can, right? I'm thinking like, okay, if I am playing with my son and he accidentally, knocks me with his arm or his elbow or his knee, totally unintentional, it hurt, but he didn't mean to do it, would be totally different than if he was, mad and angry and was lashing out at me, right? Totally unacceptable. Hello, all those beautiful faces. How we doing? Stephanie checking in with another episode of Class Disruption, disrupting the status quo of education. And we got some Twitter trials and tribulations, but before we get into it, I need you to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, hit that bell so you can get notified every time I drop a video, and of course share this video. And let's get into it. So, teacher Twitter. What are we going to do with you? I'm just very grateful that at least at this point, teacher Twitter is not a reflection of the real world, and that is a really good thing, because it worries me, the ideas that teachers express on there, the way that we are policing language, freedom of speech is being questioned, things that teachers can and can't say, ways that we should let our students talk and not be able to talk. I heard a teacher say or ask, what would you do if a student walked in with a Trump shirt? Right now, I am no Trump supporter, I am no Biden supporter, but a kid can walk in my classroom with the name of any American presidential candidate, and I will gladly welcome them. They're a kid, first of all, right? And second of all, it is paramount to any classroom, to any learning experience, that we hear a spectrum of ideas, a myriad of ideas from all sides of the conversation. And we may not like the way that people express themselves. It may make us feel a certain type of way, but at the end of the day, it's about the content of the ideas. And now, if somebody crosses the line, if somebody says something that's clearly bigoted or inappropriate, yeah, we step up, we step in, we say something. But we also don't necessarily need to hold it against that person, right? In this kind of grudge sort of way. So I just wanted to bring you through this string of tweets that kind of captures a lot of these different trends and ideas that I'm hearing teachers on Twitter express. This one specifically in the context of teacher PD, but I think a lot of the same things have been being said about the norms and expectations of our classrooms, but I can't say norms because, well, we'll find out. So let's get into these tweets. So this is the main tweet right here. Workshop agreements I no longer use. Assume best intentions. Engage with civility. Also, I no longer call them norms because we are actually upholding white norms. So, nah. What are the ones you no longer use? And so right away, it's just anti. Like, we can't use this, cancel this, but there's no explanation of why, I guess, other than these are white norms, but again, there's no evidence of these solely being white norms. I've been in a variety of spaces with a variety of different people from different backgrounds and races, from different countries and in different countries. And I mean, norms vary from place to place depending on the culture and the purpose of what you're doing. And I would say if you're trying to create a certain setting, it doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, you're gonna want certain norms. That doesn't mean... Anyways, so like I said, and other than that, and she doesn't give any suggestions for how we should change our language or why that language would be better. So right away, those are my two kind of, with this post. And then you can see all up and down, so many different comments. And I pulled out some of the threads I wanted to show. So here's one. It says, I've always had a problem with disagree with the idea, not the person. No. Also, any mention of safe space is a no-go. Safe for whom? So again, it's going back to just disagreeing, not really saying why they disagree. I guess the one saying safe space for whom, but there's no expansion on these thoughts. It's just cancel, but why? And she says disagree with the idea, not the person. No, we don't need a conversation to get personal. There's some settings, if it's in the family or boyfriend-girlfriend relationship or any type of, girlfriend-girlfriend relationship, I want to be inclusive here, then maybe it gets more personal. But when we're in a classroom or when we're in a professional development setting, it's got to be about the ideas. And, you ride that borderline of personal, professional, and you use your discretion. That's what being human is. And so I responded. So the disagree with the idea one, Dr. Jones, could you give a deeper dive on the problem with that? I've heard it in so many sessions. And this right here, this is what you got to do. Ask questions, right? Okay, so you're saying this. Give me some more evidence. Work this out for me. Let me see your thinking on this. That's a similar approach I take as well. So she says, I think it's a form of tone policing and essentially tells us that the person should be separate from the ideas that they espouse. Who gets the privilege for being separate from their own ideas? And so, again, this is that point where it's talking about to kind of riding that line. Sometimes when I'm trying to work out something that's tough, I throw a wide variety of ideas, from something I could see works on this side, something I could see work on this side, something in the middle, and it's about working through them. But you can't be too scared to say something that's over here or over here that you're going to hurt somebody's feelings, because maybe the overall idea doesn't work, but there might be something of value in that helps you find that appropriate center. And then I point out, right, because she says that this is something about tone policing. I'm like, how is that tone policing? That's the opposite of tone policing. Right? Look at the content, not how it's being said. Also, you may not like someone, but they often have something of value to say. Don't let outside social issues interfere with classwork. Again, it's talking about professional development. I said classwork because I kept thinking okay, if this is what teachers are expecting on themselves, this is obviously going to transfer into the classroom. And then I got a response to this, weaponized to allow bigots to engage in bigotry but not be labeled as bigots, and that doesn't sit right with marginalized identities. And then I said, so there's no disagreement allowed at all, and I got no response to that. Again, this notion that by allowing free speech, we allow bigotry. In one sense, it's true, right? Okay, if anybody can say anything, then you can say something bigoted. But at the same time, we can push back on that, right? And define those parameters that we all come to an agreement. And if, a lot of times things might be taken as bigoted. Maybe the person didn't mean it in the way that we're perceiving it. They were trying to get to a certain idea, and we should help them get to that idea and point out why expressing it that way didn't work. And it seems like some people are saying that, but in practice, that's not how it plays out. It turns into these struggle sessions of you have to admit why you were wrong and why you were bad, and it becomes very personal about the person instead of about that idea that you are working on. So let's go to another bit in here. Another person said, give them the benefit of the doubt. When I seriously doubt they deserve the benefit of benevolence to begin with. Hence why I'm here. So right away, she's switching our whole innocent until proven guilty to you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And you'll see. So I said, yes, assuming the worst in everybody is a great way to move through life. I say that assuming the best of you, though, and I'm always open to a dialogue if you care to expand your position. And then instead of engaging in what I would view as potentially a constructive conversation, and this is another person, it's not the same as the original comment, but she says, my commentary up and down this thread is deeply problematic and center white comfort.
And I just respond saying, I'd be open to discussing specific instances and examples. I frequently have productive conversations with people of all different races and creeds, and we always find areas to agree and places to push each other's thinking.
And then another person wants to come in and tell me, again, it's all about my whiteness.
You are valuing white comfort by effectively saying, let me feel safe. Don't make me feel uncomfortable by calling me out when I'm saying something offensive.
Which I don't even understand how you can come to that conclusion when I'm the one sitting here saying, hey, let's talk about this. Like, you're saying this, I have a slightly different understanding of it. Let's try to get as close in our understanding as we can. Of course, if we can always agree to disagree about certain things. That shouldn't be an automatic, no, we can't have this relationship or have any different interactions with each other. And I tell her as much. I say, if I say something that's offensive or if I say something that doesn't sound right, push back on me. That's what it's about. And then, no, but this is my all-time favorite. And by favorite, I mean my least favorite. And obviously the most anti-intellectual, just I'm going to stop this conversation in its tracks. And she says,
not my job to educate you. I don't get paid for that. Call it as I saw it. Hope you're open to learning. Several people gave you some free labor. Up to you what you want to do with that gift.
Really? We're having a dialogue on Twitter. And you did nothing to that dialogue but say, it's your whiteness, it's not my job to teach you anything. So you can just make accusations, have nothing to back it up, but feel good about yourself.
And then just going down, another person says, wow, I def say assume good intent all the time. Thanks for that push to look at that more critically.
And again, pushing somebody to look at something critically is one thing, but the other thing is just saying I'm just going to stop saying this because you said to stop saying this. And that's essentially what this tweet was. She didn't say why it was problematic or give you any alternatives. And then I say, and again, I'm kind of thinking about this in the context of, okay, if this is what teachers are doing at PD, that's obviously what's going to be used to inform their class experience. And so I'm thinking about in terms of my kids, my students.
Why should we not push our kids to assume the best intentions? If they're afraid of saying the wrong thing, they may say nothing at all. Always assume the best and ask questions to unpack and guide their thinking.
And that's what I'm saying. Okay, somebody said something, it comes off as a little offensive. It could be jarring, but I'm going to ask questions to unpack that. I'm going to say, okay, what do they really mean? Or is that what they really meant? And from there, I can make my conclusion. But if you're coming in with a foregone conclusion, then that's obviously a recipe for madness. As you can see, our world right now is a little mad. And I'm not dismissing that some of the issues that they bring up are legitimate. 100% on board for big structural reform, just not for the tearing down and canceling of everything in society. So let's see how this goes on. Okay, so now another person's coming into the conversation. They're gonna help us unpack this idea of why we should prioritize impact over the intent.
I think because assume good intent can cover the ability to acknowledge the impact of a statement. I'm thinking in terms of microaggressions. Just because you didn't intend to be harmful doesn't mean it wasn't harmful.
Totally agree with that whole, you don't intend something to be harmful, but sometimes it can, right? I'm thinking okay, if I am playing with my son and he accidentally, knocks me with his arm or his elbow or his knee, totally unintentional. It hurt, but he didn't mean to do it. Would be totally different than if he was, mad and angry and was lashing out at me, right? Totally unacceptable. It didn't hurt any more or less, but the intent definitely matters. And I would say the same thing when you're speaking. If I'm speaking and I say something, sometimes you're trying to work thoughts out, it doesn't come out exactly right, or just where you're from, you've never been exposed to another way to do it, right? But you have to see the human in somebody first, right? We're all on this journey together. And that's why I think I've been very successful with a lot of my coworkers who we have vastly different ideas is We see each other as humans, we're friends with each other, we know the work that we put in the classroom. And so we know that that end goal is the same, but that often we're coming at it from different perspectives, and we use it to push each other. And ultimately it works out to create this nice balance. And I'm very grateful to have people to push me in that thinking, because I don't know it all, and sometimes I've never thought about it in this other way, and I maybe not fully agree with that way, but I can take some bits and pieces of that and incorporate it into what I do and have this dynamic conglomeration of different practices I'm picking up along the way. And ultimately that's the beauty. We don't want every teacher to do everything the same, because not every student is the same. They should go from class to class experiencing different personalities, different ideas, different way to express themselves, so then they can take what they like, take what they don't like, and be their own unique individual.
Okay, so here's something else. I actually like this. It comes from this thing about white norms, which I actually was starting to look through right here, and I think I'm going to do a whole different video on this because it talks about white norms specifically in the context of education. But in the tweet, it does says the things listed at the start, so this tweet right here about things not to use in the conversation, she says these aren't norms, they are aspirations or ideals. Norms are behaviors that can be actually enacted. Also, Norms also include sanctions for not adhering to the expected behavior, and that typically is not done through aspirations.
I agree with this, and that's why I think that also the tweet is a little misleading, because it's not a norm. Those are aspirations for the conversation, which could be totally different than a norm. And I'm definitely gonna unpack this idea a little bit more. Look at me using that language and explore this. So look for that video coming up.
Here's something else. Okay, this is again another thing on the whole assume best intentions versus impact. So I like to replace assume best intentions with intention versus impact. I feel like it's more helpful to acknowledge the impact of words and actions over the intent behind them. And then somebody's just saying that they had this as a norm at a recent PD. Impact matters more than intention.
So again, that makes me nervous, because if I'm sitting here and I have something to add to the conversation, but I haven't even an inkling of that it might come off wrong to somebody or sound, make somebody uncomfortable, then what am I gonna do? I'm gonna censor myself and not say anything at all. So I think that whether we're calling it an aspiration or a norm, it is not desirable to make people scared to say something because they might impact somebody. That's the whole point of having conversation. Hey, this made me feel that way for these reasons. And then either a person might double down, a person might say, oh, I see what you're saying, right? And then you really get to see the true person. But you got to assume that people are trying to participate in the conversation the best that they can. I mean, I guess you can say don't assume anything at all, and see what's gonna come. But again, I still think that's almost like defaults to assume the best, right? If you're not assuming anything at all, you're gonna see what's coming and then let the evidence speak for itself, which is what I think assuming the best means. So maybe we do need to shift that language. So again, a lot of people interested in this idea of intent versus impact, and I really like the way that this guy approaches it. He says,
curious how folks feel about assume positive intent until proven otherwise.
Which is what I was saying, which is kind of like the standard of law. Assume innocent until proven guilty.
And then he gets a response, I prefer to focus on impact over intent. I do think most intentions are positive because people aren't monsters, but so what? I'm at the workshop to learn, do better. Whether I can take feedback and center the needs of those I'm impacting will reveal my true intentions.
And I do, I agree with that for the most part. If you're able to engage in a conversation and recognize the ideas of other people, and you don't have to fully be like, oh, well, I'm totally wrong, but you can incorporate their ideas. I think that is definitely what we're going for. But this whole language of impact over intent, it doesn't make space for that in the way that I think they're claiming it does.
And I reply in this way. I say, the issue with this is someone can always claim negative impact and avoid analyzing an idea. Just because you felt hurt doesn't necessarily take away from the merit of an idea. Both must be considered, especially when unpacking difficult issues. There needs to be room to explore. And then I like this response from Chris right below me. He says, related, I've used trust, intent, name, impact.
And I like this framing. It gets rid of that assume word, and it's saying trust. And then if you don't like the intent, name how it impacted you so we can discuss it.
The idea is to take responsibility for our impact of others. This is a tricky balance when impact becomes a learning moment, which is why intent can matter.
It can matter, but it shouldn't be just this black and white thing. Like, it doesn't matter at all what your intentions are. We're going to come down on you hard because you said this thing that makes us feel bad and you should be canceled and you can't be in this group. It is not a safe space anymore. Oh, wait, we're not allowed to say safe space either. I give up. All right, I think I had something else in here. So this is the one, I don't even know what she's trying to say here. Like, you guys got to help me out. She says,
jokes aside, what it comes down to for me is by assuming good intent, I'm actually making it less safe because now I am prioritizing someone's potential feelings over real impacts.
Like, what? I read it so many times and I just can't make sense of it.
I'm actually making it less safe if I assume good intent. I make it less safe because I'm prioritizing someone's potential feelings over real impacts.
Prioritizing their potential feelings over real impacts. To me, I thought that's, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me. If somebody can explain that to me, comment down below. I would love to. I just think that she's almost she took what I said and then flipped it backwards I don't know. But last thing I just wanted to point out, I really liked this thread right here. My girl, Kimberly Payton, and I followed her because I really liked the way that she approached this.
She said, wait, what? What exactly would those norms be? Or the term you're using instead.
So again, she's asking those questions. Okay, so what are those norms specifically? Like, what does that mean in application of these assume best, like what do, because again, norms are about actions. Or what terms are you using instead? Okay, give me an alternative. Don't just cancel. Give me something else and tell me why that's better.
And then she just goes back by saying this Twitter thread has a lot of great suggestions that I'm thinking about, guidelines, intentions, agreements, disagreements, some good ones on here.
So it's a decent, kind of response, but I still think it's a little bit of a cop-out because she's the one who said it, and then she's just like, oh, look at these other people. Well, they've done labor for her. She should pay them. And then Kimberly comes back truly trying to understand, but if a diverse classroom creates expectations of behavior, how are those white norms? And that's what I'm asking too. Like, if I create a group of expectations with my students who 99.9% of them are black and brown, how would what they create be white norms? I guess the argument would be they live in a white society. Everything is white supremacy.
So she said, not getting how the term norms is white. Couldn't the same be applied to agreements? Good point. And then somebody says, I thought about this a lot too and came to this. When we say norms, we should ask, normed to what standard? More often than not, it is a white standard.
Maybe. I mean, you're in America. It is a predominantly white country. So, I mean, that's not dynamic enough, and it doesn't give credit enough to the different types of spaces that the many different people who populate this country have created. I mean, New York is just such a melting pot, and you can go from neighborhood to neighborhood and people get along, and when you might use slightly different behavior from one culture to another to show respect, but is it not a norm then if you're in, if I'm in the Bronx and I go to a bodega, like we call it a bodega in the Bronx, like that's a norm, versus if you're in Connecticut, it's just the corner store. So, and Kimberly comes back saying something as much.
How is agreed upon appropriate behavior white? How is race attributed to expectations regarding how people, students, civilly interact? I'm truly not trying to be difficult. I'm interested in the explanation.
Again, really loving this approach by asking questions, showing you're curious and interested. And then
civil discourse often becomes a way of shielding white people from discomfort and shutting down BIPOC's expression of anger and frustration when they are pointing out racist practices. Just one way these types of norms center whiteness.
So again, we're taking this idea of like civil discourse to mean specifically like, oh, we're all so nice to each other. But I actually think civil discourse, right, what makes a civil society is when you don't let each other off easy. So again, I think so they're taking the word civil and they're applying it into, they're defining it wrong. Like a civilization means that it has certain characteristics that make it into a functioning civilization. It's not like, oh, these people are civilized versus uncivilized, like in the way like they act like animals or something. That's the wrong definition. And then she comes back.
Just so I'm tracking, it's racist to have discussions in which participants are all not asked to not yell or cuss or try to self-regulate. Truly, is that what you mean? And then somebody comes back. You're making assumptions here, and you've just proved through your statement how norms center whiteness. Yes, it would be racist. It's called tone policing. Not cool at all.
So I'm not really sure how that proves her whiteness or is centering her whiteness there. I mean, again, this is anecdotal, but there's teachers in my school, we have black teachers in my school, and I would say that their rooms are like the most like cuss-free rooms. Like you are not allowed to curse in their rooms. Versus like me, I'm a little bit more lenient about that. So I think that's more of a personality thing.
But again, emotions aren't white. When upset, when passionate, so having an expectation norm to self-regulate that in discourse is somehow white makes no sense.
And this is the whole point here, is now we're starting to attribute like certain emotions like to whole groups of people. And I thought the whole point was to not do that. To try to see people as individuals. Like groups of people are not monoliths. There's lots of variations in different groups of people within those. And it just seems like a regression in the way that we talk about race and go to interact with each other. And I am scared. I know this is just teacher Twitter, and Twitter in general seems to be a lot more radical and a lot further left than the generality of society, but the way it is spilling over into the streets now, the way that it is taking advantage of what I think it is truly an authentic, Black Lives Matter movement, is being co-opted by a lot of these ideas that are not, in line with this vision of a liberal society that's trying to constantly progress forward and move past a lot of these issues. So I'm just gonna stay vigilant. I'm gonna keep doing my thing. I'm gonna keep creating the spaces in my classroom that I think allow for that vibrant conversation. And I'm gonna keep engaging in those conversations, both here on this channel and with a lot of my coworkers. I mean, y'all know who you are. We go at it, like we push each other's thinking, but at the end of the day, we do work. And we put it in for these students, and we know that we have the best intentions, even if we don't express and approach it exactly the same way. And that's the beauty in it. So if you enjoy this content, you already know, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, hit that bell so you get notified every time I drop a video. And I told you they're coming like hotcakes. I got a few more lined up for you. And share this video, right? It's all about that teacher power, coming together, spreading ideas. And, like I said, comment. Let me know what you're thinking. What things do you agree with? What things do you disagree with? Push my thinking. That is what I want more than anything. And I want to push yours. Class disruption is all about saying those things that might make you feel a certain type of way, or might make you say, I don't know, right? And then we get into it. But we cannot be scared to speak, right? Disrupt that class. And y'all already know that's why I say, stay foolish, y'all.